Welcome to the next episode of The Extraordinary Life with Jean Rule. I'm here with my good friend Sanae Garvin. Sanae and I have been friends for a few years now, and we'll get into where we met in just a second. But thank you so much for being on my program, Sanae. Welcome.
Thank you, Jean.
Well, we have something in common. We're both homeschool families. We met. Really, I have to go back to when we were living in Portland. We had just started homeschooling in 2008. The moving truck hadn't even come yet, and we were homeschooling our two. Sent David off to fifth grade, and Lauren and Sam were stuck with me at a house without any furniture. Quickly, we realized that there was a lot of freedom and a lot of opportunity with homeschooling. And within 2 years, we recognized we wanted to do speech and debate. And we set about finding a club to join. And we did. We found a club called Rainmakers. And it was an awesome experience for David. He was the one that was old enough. And we went to, I think, 2 tournaments that year when Dave got a promotion of sorts. He applied for a job up here in the Seattle area, president of Bellevue College. And so we took the job and moved, not realizing that we didn't have a club to join up here with the National League that we were a part of. And so in grand, fearless Jean fashion, I started one. And that very first year, I got no takers, which can be a little discouraging, but not for me, right? So we tried again in year 2. We got 5 families to join us. By year 3, you and your lovely family joined, along with like 25 other families. It was like this windfall of, oh my gosh, what do we do now? Now there's too many. But we took you all in. I can't really recall our very first meeting. I remember your son, Rio, more than anyone, because he had one of those signature things about him. He had a braid that, how long had he been growing that thing?
Oh, since he was first grade.
Oh my goodness. And we're not talking his whole head, just this little tiny, like probably the diameter of your pinky off the back of his neck.
Yes, and recently he cut it off because I guess he got tired of it and
There you go.
graduating from high school.
Well, Sanae, I know you as being of Japanese descent, but could you tell us a little bit about your background? I believe you grew up in Japan, and just, a few things about Japanese culture. I'm just fascinated. My son Sam was able to go with my husband on a trip a couple years ago to Japan as well as South Korea, and it was fascinating. I remember him eating squid caught by fishermen right on the shores, like live, just squiggling, and then pop it in your mouth. So I love the food and the culture and the discipline. But can you tell us your experience a little bit?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Tokyo in the 70s in an ordinary family of 5. I have mom and dad, both are working, and my younger brothers who are only 18 months old, but they're identical twins. So my mom was always attending them, and I tried helping mom, but I became very independent. Yeah, Japan is famous for how it's safe. It's changing a little bit, but still pretty safe. And then back when I was little, apparently it was a lot safer. And I'm going to share with you one story. So when I was 4, only 4, my mom told me at this train station that I don't even recognize. And she said, get off of this train station, and then go right and left and right, and find her friend's house that apparently I've been to before. And so she went back to the train, and the train door shut, and then train left. And I was all by myself in this train station that I don't even know where that was. And I tried my best, but of course, I couldn't find the house. And I went back to the station. Of course, my mom has already left, and I didn't know what to do.
Wow.
And yeah, with this 4-year old brain, I thought, that's right. When I'm lost, I'm supposed to go to this police box. So in Japan, they set up this small police office everywhere. And so when you need a policeman, you can just find and then go and visit and then ask for help. So there was conveniently one right next to the train station. So I went there and they explained that I was lost. And they asked me my phone number and my name. And I was so nervous, but I just kind of sat there. And I remember the policeman gave me a couple cookies on a tissue, which I still remember. I was so nervous. I was trying not to cry. And then, like an hour or two later, my grandma showed up. They don't drive. Most people don't. So she had to take public transportation to get there. And then my mom came home and I thought she would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" No, she said, "Why didn't you find a house?"
Great.
And I just told her the story recently, and then she's like, "Did I? I don't even recall that." Oh my gosh, that was quite an adventure for a 4-year old, but it shows how safe the country
Mhm.
is. 4-year old could just
Wow.
kind of walk around somewhere that,
Mm.
yeah, they don't even know.
Yeah. Well, certainly not our experience today where we live. Good thing you didn't live in Capitol Hill.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know if you have any luck. Anyway, um, the other thing that we have in common is that we both have kids that are adopted. Get into that in a minute. I'd love to hear about your adoption of your little girl and that story. But can you tell us a little bit about your family dynamics? I know when you came to the United States for the first time, you came as a, do they, would they call it a culture exchange or student exchange or what's
Yeah.
that called?
Yeah, so I'm married to an American husband. Um, and then I have 5 kids. I have 4 boys, and I have a little girl from China who came about 2.5 years ago. Yes. But yeah, so uh, like I said, I grew up in Japan. Went to girls Catholic school in Japan, and they had a homestay program, which is that
Mm.
we get to experience staying with American family for 3 weeks and then just go back to normal life in Japan. So I joined that. That's the time I met my husband, Nate.
So you were how old for this homestay, 3-week homestay? You just left Tokyo, got on a plane with a bunch of other students
Yep.
your age and came to, was it Oregon?
Yes, that was Oregon. And I was 16. So that makes me
Mm.
10th grade.
All right. And I believe Nate was the host family for of one of your girlfriends.
That's right.
Is that how the story went? And
Yeah,
that I guess you all got together for different events and he came along to help kind of teach y'all a little bit about American culture
that's
and
right.
language.
That's right.
And he was how old?
He was 14, but I didn't approach him
Ooh,
to marry him.
right. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it was just a crazy story. Another one. Just like 3 months before I met him, before this homestay, I just saw just 5 seconds of this Japanese old group from the 70s. So that was 1989 already. So, this group, kind of like Japanese Jackson 5, five brothers and sister singing the Motown songs and whatnot. And it was popular in the early 70s, and I was a baby, so I don't remember them, but I saw on
Mm,
TV for about 5 seconds. And then I just fell in love with the group. And then guess what? 3 months later, I found the most popular vocal of the group, kind of like Michael in the Jackson 5,
mhm.
in Oregon. And I just asked around, who is that? Who is that? And my friend said, "Oh, that's my host brother, Nathan." And I was like, "Okay, I gotta meet him." And then I went close to him, and then I said, I practiced my English. I heard, I barely spoke English, so I just said hello. And I said my name. And I said, "You look like my favorite singer." And then, poor guy, he was 14, sitting there. He didn't know what to say. He said, "Okay."
Okay.
And then I said, "Goodbye." And he said, "Bye." And that was our first conversation. And we befriended. We had lots of fun together. I mean, with as a group. And little did I know, got married to him about 10 years later.
Mm.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like you had gone back to Tokyo and then, upon graduating from high school, decided to come to the States for college and got both. Was it your bachelor's and master's in education?
So that was my bachelor's, majored in international studies, and I studied a lot of Spanish language and then the culture and geography there. And I didn't get my teaching license till I got my master's after working 1 year in Portland.
Well, then you decided to have a few kids, 4 boys, I believe. I think you have a 4. Is one of them 14 right now?
Actually, yes, my number three is 14. Yikes.
Oh, dear. Yes. Well, I would stay away from the homestay, experiences if I were you. I don't know if, lightning strikes twice.
Uh,
Well, then you decided to homeschool your kids, correct?
Yes, yes. Yeah, my oldest finished fifth grade in public school. And
Mhm.
yes, we felt like we were called to homeschool. And so we jumped right in.
Yeah. Well, we certainly enjoyed our homeschool experience. We did the same thing. Our oldest finished 5th grade in a private school setting, but then started homeschooling from then on in, and never looked back. Lauren just graduated from high school just this season and turned 18. So I feel like we're done in that respect. But now here we have Jason, so we're having to start that decision process all over again. What is going to be the best education setting for him? Well, at some point, you decided to adopt, and not just adopt, but adopt a child from another country with special needs. Can you tell us about how that decision came about?
Yes, we were always surrounded by wonderful families who have adopted internationally or domestically or special needs or whatnot. And we always saw them with respect and with great love. And I was very impressed. And then it is actually pretty common in America. In Japan, it is still very uncommon. In fact, I have only known one family who have adopted, which is my brother's family, actually, and they have two little ones. But yeah, in the States, there are
Mm,
so many families, especially in my church, there are quite a few, and then some homeschooling community.
mm. I appreciate Americans. I think that they have such a huge heart. And the amount that go about adopting kids from other countries or domestically, and those that have special needs, it's just a rare breed of person that can take that on. I was talking to my husband recently about adoption, and prior to our own experience, and like you, we've known a lot of people that have taken on adoption. I always thought of it like, oh, isn't that so picture perfect? Isn't that so cool that this family is finding a child and they're matching each other up and they're able to be a family. But then I ended up going through the adoption process ourselves and having Jace with us. And what I'm finding is that it really is such brokenness. It's really being able to put back together something that is just so fragile and so broken. And yeah, so it's just a totally different perspective than what I thought it was. When you're not in the thick of it and you're watching from the outside, it just looks like, oh, how pretty, how perfect.
Right.
But, oh, that child's completing that family. How wonderful. And it's really just the
Yes.
opposite, that the parents are doing some heavy lifting that you don't see on the outside. I mean, and sometimes you do see it, and it's not pretty. You
Mhm.
see
Yep.
some meltdown in the store, or at a park, or at school, and you're wondering what is that all about? And oftentimes, it can be traced back to traumas that these kids have gone through, for
That's
sure.
right.
So tell us about your little girl. Why did you pick her, and from where, and how old is she, and what is her special need and such?
Yes. We named her Aya. That's a Japanese name. Named her with a Chinese character which Japanese people use in the Japanese language. It means arrow of love. And we wanted
Mm,
her to be used to communicate love um, to other people, especially because we are Christians and we want God to use her for his tool to show love, his love, God's love to the people around her. And so she came 2007 in September. Nate and I, with June, our son, back then he was 4. Yeah, wait, 5. Sorry. Um, so 3 of us went to Tianjin, China. It's just right next to Beijing, the capital, and to pick her up. But before we got there, I wasn't necessarily planning to adopt. I always admired families who adopted, but I was seeing something that was going on in those adoptive families who are going through a lot of challenges. Yet I was seeing something just beautiful, and I just can't explain, but some uh, beyond human beauty, but something that much bigger. And I was always moved to kind of see that. And then I desired to have that for myself or my family. But I wasn't thinking of adoption. I wanted that without having to go through hard things.
that's kinda like wanting six-pack abs without,
Working out.
going to the gym. I know. You don't get that quality, whatever that quality is that you're
That's
talking about, I
right.
know it
That's
well,
right.
without putting in almost like stripping yourself of yourself
Yes.
is what that is. You become a servant, and
Yes.
yeah.
However, um, I felt like I was being called to do that. And especially a friend, a good friend, who's adopted 4-year-old little girl, just passed away only like fourth day in the States with her family.
Mm.
And she had Down syndrome. And I went to the memorial service, and I felt like I had a definite call there to adapt myself. And
Mhm.
then I told later Nate, but not immediately. And then Nate needed some time to think and pray about it. But then we came to the conclusion and like, yes, let's do it. And yes, I forgot to mention Aya has Down syndrome. And also, as we were choosing her through the website called Reese's Rainbow, um, they have a lot of waiting children listed on the website. And so it was kind of strange to pick, but with lots of prayer, we found a little girl who has a heart defect, because we are in the Seattle area. We're so blessed to have amazing hospitals and facilities and to take care of that kind of needs. And so we wanted to choose someone who needs the help. So that was Aya. However, it was funny. As soon as she came from China, we took her to the hospital because we didn't know this heart condition needs immediate surgery or not. And then they said, well, her heart is repaired and it's healed. And we just couldn't believe it. So what does it
Wow.
mean? They said, well, she doesn't need surgery and she probably needs a checkup every few years, but that's it. And we were just excited. And it's hard to believe.
Wow.
Yeah, it's good
Mhm.
news.
Cool. Yeah. Those surgeries are not easy on those little ones.
Yes, yes.
Have friends with Down syndrome kids and, looking at those photos of their chest ripped open. Wow.
Yes. Well, in fact, she had a
Mm,
surgery when she was 5 months old in China,
mhm,
but she has very little record, so we didn't know what that was. Yeah, but she does have the big scar.
mm. I recall attending an adoption party for her when you first brought her here. It was a really special celebration. Yet I sense that it's not as common as celebrating the birth of a biological child. What do you think people can do that are really intentional to come up alongside of families that choose adoption? I just sense that a lot of times people don't know what to do.
It's true.
What's your sense?
Yes. So, like you said, Jean, earlier, if you see us only through Facebook posts and just saying hi and bye, just, in the neighborhood passing by a store, it looks like we have a pretty perfect family. We are self sufficient, and Aya is just sweet little darling. But it really took a long time to come to this point. Um, Adopted kids are usually really, they don't say it, but especially she can't talk, but it's a lot of brokenness in them. And they come with a huge baggage. And Aya was in an orphanage, which was a really nice orphanage compared to other orphanages in China. But still, orphanage is an orphanage, and there are many wonderful but still caretakers in and out and in and out. She never had mom and dad and a stable family environment to grow. And so when she first came, she was cheerful, but she was extremely aggressive. And she just come behind her brother, who is about the same age, just drop something heavy, like a huge book or something, just to hurt him. And he screams, and we were like, "What is going on?" And her brother June being so furious, and at one point, it just keeps continue that, and then she spits up adult, and she hits other kids, and then all these quote misbehavior, and I just didn't know what to do. And at one point, I regretted, like, wow, what have I done? And maybe this was a
Mhm,
mistake. But at the same time, I hear and read all the time. And then I was in training also. This is pretty typical and normal. And sure enough, she has grown so much. And she started to recognize us as family. At the beginning, she just wanted to follow everyone else or whoever seemed nice or exciting. She just wanted to follow. But after a few months, she started to recognize that this is where she belongs. Then, after that, she started to recognize who she was. She didn't even know who she was because she was always relative. There was no place that she
mhm,
really belonged. And she learned her name, and she cared that we show up at school or Sunday school. And she was very excited to see us in different environment because she knows we belong to her. And that was
mhm.
just amazing experience that how we are built. even non special needs or not orphanage, sometimes we feel lost. But having a family or a sense of belonging to a family, and that is huge. And I got to see that firsthand, and I was so grateful to be able to see and recognize it and be part of her life because otherwise I can't even imagine she would still live in that condition, not knowing even who she was. Yeah.
Mm. What has it done to your four boys?
Yes, my boys have grown so much. Like the youngest, June, he was always, the youngest. So nobody tried to break his little project, Lego project, and nobody wanted what he wanted. And when he asked his big brothers, I want that, I want that. And then they are willing to give up. But when Aya came, she tries to take things from him. And at the beginning, he was frustrated, but he quickly learned to give up what he had. And he started to learn patience. And he became kinder and he became more like a protector rather than just the youngest spoiled little brat. So that was exciting. And older brothers, they were just always willing to help. And sometimes I have warned them before that if we adopt this little girl, then we will have less money, less time, or at least mom has less time for each of the kids and less space in
Mm.
the house. Our house is already pretty small and we don't have much, but we're just going to have to share, and it's going to be even more of that. And I might not be able to sign you up for the next sports event or whatever. And then they were all okay. So I was really touched, but really they lived up for what they actually initially said. They sometimes I really needed them to older ones to stay home because I had some important appointment, and I needed them to stay home and watch Aya, and they sometimes had to give up the previous engagement with friends or some kind of a church group, youth group activity, and they have never complained or said no, and they were always willing to give up on what they had to do, go out on their friends with movies. And so I felt bad, but sometimes that I also think it's a good thing. So yeah.
Well, we get the same thing with our kids. We have three older kids, 18, 20, and 22 now. And when Jace came to live with us 2 years ago, it was similar. Lauren was still living at home. The other two were in college, but there was a lot of expectation that they would help out. And although we try to shield them on some level because they weren't necessarily the ones that made the decision to adopt Jace, it still is, goes unsaid that he's a part of our family. And as such, they have a responsibility to him. And he will, in turn, build things in them that will be built by no other
Yes.
means. And that is sacrifice or fortitude or long suffering. They're not always those good traits that we talk about, but they're good character building traits,
Yes.
though. Well, what would you say to the family that's contemplating an adoption of a special needs child?
Um, yes, I'd like to say that, as I mentioned earlier, it won't be easy or pretty, but the reward is huge. Definitely be in a lot of training and they hear what kind of things could happen. And if you are still willing to pursue this route. And my story earlier pretty much said it, but you may have a day that you may regret the decision, but it's just part of the journey, and you get to see the beauty beyond that. And I am still pretty new to adoption and still learning, but I'm seeing good things, and I wouldn't trade this for anything. And there's one movie that I'd recommend for anyone, but especially those families who consider an adoption to watch. It's called Instant Family. And have you seen it, Jean, before? Oh, you got
No, I
to.
haven't. Mm-mm.
It's not little children friendly with the languages and stuff. So just watch as like all the kids or adults. But it's fascinating. It kind of really shows in the comedy, with laughs and ridiculous settings, but still it kind of shows the truth and the challenges, and then also our own heart's hypocrisy, and all these things are kind of exposed, and still it's full of truth, and it's a wonderful
Mhm.
movie.
Well, I have to link it on my website, theextraordinarylifewithjeanrule.com. For those that want to check it out, I'll make sure to watch it myself and put it on there. So thanks for the tip. Well, I think one of the things that my good friend Nicole says too is if people really want to get their feet wet, to consider fostering to begin with, to try it out. Either become a respite family where you take a child with special needs just for a weekend. They'll train you and make sure your house is compatible and your family compatible, and then just kind of get your feet wet and take in a child for a limited period of time to kind of test the waters and make sure that that's a viable fit for you. So I tend to think too that I'm really inspired by other people. And there's nothing more inspiring than watching a family adopt and just go through the trenches, but also have those wonderful moments and be able to impact a child's life is pretty profound. I know I talk about my friend Nicole Eatock and others that are in this series that I hope some listeners have already listened to, and they really are remarkable. But I do notice a trend where if you're not around families who adopt, then you tend to not adopt. If you're from a family that maybe your parents adopted you or adopted a sibling, you'll be more apt to adopt because that's something that you're comfortable with, right? We tend to gravitate towards things that we have had modeled before us or that inspire us. And I just sense in our culture today, we're getting more confined. Our circle of friends or the people that we find affinity with are narrowing to be people just like us. Where adoption is one of those things where you really need to know somebody who is totally different from you, who's not in your circle per se. And so I really encourage people to put themselves in positions where they're exposed to just different types of lifestyles, different types of families, so that we can develop empathy and compassion and find ways to help each other, help us get through those very difficult parenting years, no matter what the family makeup is. I know today we're talking about adoption and foster care, but it really does apply to any family dynamic. And it's so easy to say, well, that's not me or that's not my lifestyle. Okay, well, get over it and let's go outside of our comfort zone and make a friend with somebody that maybe isn't like us and watch the growth that can take place that may even surprise you. I'm pretty passionate about that, as you can see. Well, anyway, Sinai, let's bring it to a close by asking this question of you. If we were to bury this interview in a time capsule and 20 years from now, dig it up, unearth it, what would you say to your future self or to your kids or your husband or even just America?
As an immigrant from another country, I am very grateful for this country and people. And there are so many different kind of people, or of course, good people and bad people, and just like everywhere else in the world. But I have learned so much, and so many people have come alongside me, and I was helped and supported when I needed help, even when my English was very limited. And people here in America, very generous, and I want that to continue despite all the problems and challenges that we are facing. And people are caring and respectful toward the special needs population, like, or ESL, like myself. So, for instance, when we go to grocery store together with Aya, my daughter, it's always someone who are there's always someone who are willing to interact with her in a friendly manner. And I've been very impressed with the public school that have very dedicated teachers, and they do such a tremendous job for to support and love Aya and make sure that she learns. My friend who are in Japan, they say Japan is nowhere near this. They don't even have the service, and it's really hard having special needs kids in school age or even after that.
Well, I know that's kind of off topic of the question, but that's okay because it makes me remember that my good friend April, and I hope to have her on the program during season 2 where we talk about education. She was a director of an autism program in Portland. She spent 2 years in Qatar in the Middle East helping their educational system come up to speed on autism. And she felt like they were behind the US by about 10 years in their handling of special needs in that particular category. So I hear what you're saying. Okay, but back to the question. If we were to bury this in a time capsule and in 10 or 20 years dig it up, what would you say?
Yes, our family, and also this, community, and then also as a nation, we want. I want to see the growth and more in generosity, kind, and good-hearted people. And there are many different opinions and how things should be, but that's also, I think, it's a sign of trying to make things better. And so, like our kids debate, I think it's great that we continue to debate and find and care for other people, and then what's truth and goodness and beauty and virtuous, right? And I want to continue to see this kind of sacrificial love that American people have shown me, like becoming adoptive parents and homestay host families, and they don't get paid, by the way, and just giving that kind of heart, and in this nation and in our children and next generation to come. So that's kind of what I want to say or to think, and they want to see in the future.
Cool. So do I. I think we have it in us. I think that the discourse that we are experiencing is for our growth, and we just need to, hear all sides and figure out what we can learn from each other.
Like you said, Jean, earlier, that in order to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoe is to be with people who are different from you. And, American people are very different from me when I first came, but I got to learn a lot and I got to grow a lot. And so we need to continue to do that, not just you decide that you are set and you only hang out with who brings you your own comfort. But sometimes it's a good thing to be uncomfortable and learn from other people's lives. And then you see something bigger than yourself. I was going to share also when I was seeking my own happiness, I was miserable. I tried to follow my heart. I tried to buy and collect things that pleases me. And yet I was lonely and I was just miserable. But being with other people who have purpose in life and are bigger than themselves and their own lives, and that really touched me. And I wanted to live like that. And I wanted what they want to have. And sure enough, homeschooling is, it's a challenge. Marriage is a challenge. Marriage is also a challenge. And just parenting, motherhood is a challenge. But all these things that involves and requires greater love than self satisfaction, but giving, giving, giving. And sometimes I feel like I'm giving more than taking, but amazingly, that brings more joy to my heart. And that has been my last almost 20 years of experience, that how I have been changed. And I'm so grateful for those people who showed me how they live. And so I can learn from them. I didn't come up with this. So very, very grateful for the people around me.
Well, and you're able to pay it forward for a whole nother generation.
To live for others rather than for their own little pleasure.
Well, I know part of my impetus with this podcast is very much to go back and revisit people that I've come in contact with, cross paths with over the years, who live fairly ordinary lives. But the extraordinary thing about it is that when they're all strung together, they really do paint a tapestry that's pretty profound. And oftentimes I look back at the ones that impacted me the most, and they're the ones that are volunteering or serving or giving or being stretched. And so those are the traits that I gravitate towards as well, and hope to reflect them in my own life. Sometimes I do a better job than others, but that's what we're all on the journey for. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sanae, for meeting with me. I appreciate you sharing your family story. I love your 4-year-old self trying to make your way home and your mom not remembering that story. Yeah. I hopefully we'll grow up and our kids won't remember all the things that we did that we regret too, right? And it's wonderful to be a part of your life with your boys and speech and debate, and then with your daughter, Aya, and the sweetheart that she is. And so please give them my best. And I look forward to seeing you soon, as soon as we can lift all this social distancing and such, and we'll get together. So thank you again.
Thank you so
Blessings to you.
much.